Hey guys, in this video we're going to be going back and revisiting the Sideshow Collectibles Catwoman 6 scale figure. Now, to trace back Catwoman's first appearance, you'd want to go back to Batman #1 back in 1940, which surprisingly enough, she did not debut as Catwoman, but instead was referred to as simply the Cat. Catwoman stands, surprisingly, exactly 12 inches tall. Now, that would be 12 inches tall from the bottom of her feet to the top of her ears. She comes with a rather neat looking hexagonal display stand, which we've seen before from Sideshow Collectibles, but we've not seen it though with this really neat print on the bottom, simulating the Gotham City Diamond Exchange, in which one of the accessories that she comes included with will have something a little bit to do with the fact that it's from the Gotham City Diamond Exchange. It does have the adjustable neck, in which the figure's crotch, basically in between the legs, will sit on top of that, and the figure will stand perfectly fine. Her body consists of a black mesh kind of full bodysuit, very actually similar to what you would expect to see on like a Black Widow. Basically, head to toe, she's wearing this black mesh outfit that has some nice panel lining here in the gray, running down the side of her torso, running down the side of her legs, and running down the sides of her arm. A close look at the mesh, you can see the care to detail that they've put into the actual outfit, and some may say perhaps the zipper seems a little bit large on proportions. I probably could maybe agree with that. The zipper can zip up and down. I won't zip it any further down, but underneath that she has a rubber torso in which the head sits on top of that. Speaking of the head though, it's always been kind of a topic of debate for me whether I like this head sculpt or not. Initial production photos prior to this figure being initially released, I thought that the face sculpt was gorgeous on Catwoman, and then getting it in hand, something seemed a little off. Sure, granted, from the side, the face actually doesn't look that bad at all, but when you turn it to the front, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels this way, there's something strange about her eyes. I like the mouth. The nose is sculpted well as the paint and a little bit of rouge that they've added to the cheeks are all nice touches. There's something about her eyes that I can't quite put my finger on. Seems strange. Again, from the side it doesn't look so bad, but when you look at it front on, it does look as if her eyeballs are sunken into the socket areas of the actual eye areas, like the eye sockets. It does look like the eyeballs are sitting further back, which is accurate, but it does seem almost lifeless at times when I've looked at this figure. Periodically, I'll just pick up this figure in my collection, and I'll just give it a gander, and I'll keep trying to rationalize in my head, does this actually have a really nice head sculpt? A lot of times I may think, yeah, I think it looks quite pretty, but maybe I feel like it looks prettier from the side than I do actually from the front. There's something about those eyes. And again, just the way that they're recessed. Maybe it's the fact that the eyeliner is so broadly black that even makes it look even more so. It almost looks like she's wearing a mask by the way that the eyes are sinking that far back. Again, doesn't look so bad from the side. When you start kind of looking at it from the front though, seems a little slightly off-putting. To remedy this, of course, they do include a pair of goggles that it's actually just elasticized, wraps completely around the cowl that she's wearing here. And you just simply go ahead and lower the goggles over top of her eyes. Now, this is a look that you could favor in exchange for displaying her with the eyes visible. I kind of dig, though, having the eyes more shown, which is, again, more problem for me because then I start noticing a little bit more the eye sculpt, rather than if I had the goggles simply straight down, I wouldn't notice that at all. Another alternative that you can also go with is that Catwoman has an alternate head sculpt, which I think, again, looks really good up to the eyes. The eyes seem almost lost in this instance, especially because they're a little bit more squinted. They look a little bit more lost because the black eyeshadow or black eyeliner is so predominant on the eye sockets. It almost seems as if like the eyes get completely lost, and because the irises are as large as they are, it looks like her whole eye area looks almost dead. Like from a distance, it actually looks like her eyeballs are stark black. Looking closer though, you can see that the irises are blue, but again, because they're so close to the socket outlines, and because you've got the eyeshadow, those eyes look a little too creepy looking. A lot of collectors, as well as myself, would be more inclined to take the goggles, which again are just elasticized, and again you can either have them completely on the top, like what you see right here, or in this instance you can bring them down. And for some strange reason, I find the goggles down looks a little nicer on the expressioned face, and the regular neutral face I'm more inclined to displaying with the goggles up. Now, one thing too, with when I got these goggles, the elastic sadly broke. There's like a little, I actually had to glue those back into place. But again, like that's probably how I would display, if I ever was to display the goggles being down, I'd be more inclined, I think, to display them with the goggles being down on this particular head sculpt. One thing as well about the interchangeable head, I'm going to go ahead and take the goggles off just because I don't want them to be in the way for this. Changing out the heads can be a little bit difficult. The reason why I say that is I'm going to go ahead and grab the neck here. Because this is all technically rubber, you can probably see where I'm going with this. Because this is technically rubber, you feel like you don't really get a good enough grip of the neck. And because the ball joint basically sits inside a rubber cavity, it can be a little difficult, I have to admit, to change out heads. So I don't do it very often at all. Sometimes I just select one head that I'm happy with, and I stick with that. You also probably saw too, changing out the head leaves, well, it leaves a little bit of that black, a little bit of rubbing against the neck area. You don't see it when the head is actually put onto the neck, but when you start taking the neck off or taking the head off, you see like little areas that have smudged on the rubber skin here. Now, one thing I've done prior to this review starting is I've already gone ahead and put the knapsack on her. She does come with a little knapsack here, and you know, you could really technically have it either way. So some people have actually positioned it the opposite way, but I have it so that the hinge works from the bottom. It simply applies the same way as any other knapsack would go over. Just simply slide it over the arms on either arm until the knapsack is in place. Again, you could have it the opposite way. There's really nothing, there's no specific way necessarily to put it on. I have it this way because I like the larger end being at the bottom. Again, you could have it completely the opposite way if you so wish. It's entirely up to you. Now this is plastic. It does open and close. Theoretically, I suppose you could put some stuff in it. The diamond, for example, as she being a cat burglar, literally, the diamond's actually really cool. We'll look into that in a second, but I thought the knapsack would be there to hold the diamond. It's not actually, it doesn't have nearly enough clearance to hold the diamond in place, so I suppose you could put the whip in there, but the whip does technically have a place. So, you know, again, it's just something that opens and closes on Catwoman here. Now I want to go ahead and talk about the one thing I don't like about the figure. I haven't liked it since the moment I picked up this figure initially, and I still don't like it to this day. Lower down into her torso, of course, she's sporting a Catwoman belt, and she's got a couple of little leg straps here that wrap completely around the back of the figure, and straps around to the back here. Here's a section that has a magnetized closure. This is where you can store the smaller whip. I'll show you that in a second. But the problem that I have, and this is one thing that I keep going back to this figure and having to fix on a regular basis, is the belt buckle. The belt buckle does not attach by snap. It does not attach by Velcro. Instead, what it does attach by is magnet. This is something that so frequently I go in and have to correct. I have to move. A lot of times when you do move the straps down on her leg, the magnet is just simply not strong enough to kind of keep everything together. I may have mentioned this at the beginning of, well, somewhere along the ways of when I first reviewed this figure, and I'll probably mention it here. I have entertained the idea of either putting like a snap on either side and snapping it shut, or simply just outright gluing it. I don't understand the logic, really. I can understand back here why they would have magnetized this, because you want this to be open and closing very, very easily. A snap would run the risk that if you pull it too much, that snap could rip, or it could rip up here. So I get why this has to be Velcro, or why this has to be magnetized. Here, on the other hand, I don't get why this has to be magnetized. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's more of a hassle, and it's just more of a hindrance than anything else, that I think I'm getting to the point where I'm probably just going to outright glue that together. It's not going to change anything to the belt. In fact, the straps, if anything, I'm going to get as low down as I possibly can, and then I'm going to just outright glue this. Call it a day, and then it's not going to go anywhere on me. Biggest problem I have with the figure is, well, you're looking at it right here. Though I still debate the sculpt of the figure's head, I think the rest of the figure actually is quite nice. I like the sculpting here of the boots, where you've got the little belt straps fastened on the sides here. That is all sculpted plastic, mind you. They've sculpted some nice treads on the undersides of her feet. I like how these are gray, offsetting to the coloring of the black, and then you've got the little silver areas of where the buckles or closures are on the sides of the boots. Again, I think the mesh on the material is quite nice. The sculpting of the gloves is also executed quite nicely, with a little bit of straps there as well. The sculpts on the individual hands are also quite nice, where they've given her the indication of claws, but without really outright making them claws. I like that. And again, I just overall like the sculpt for the most part of the face. Again, the eyes, if I basically saw like this, I think it would be a really nice figure, but there's just, again, something wrong with the eyes. It's hard not to look at the fact that the eyes just seem sunken in. Let's look at Catwoman's accessories. She comes with the diamond. I don't know what carat that would be, but I'm thinking substantially large carat size. It's not really any place that you can keep it. Again, I initially thought that it would store itself in the knapsack, but it really doesn't close properly. I suppose you could just simply display her holding said diamond in hand. She also comes with two variations of the whip. One longer whip, which has a little bit more of a relaxedness to it. It's something that could drape the full length of the figure. In some instances, I've actually wrapped it around the figure's shoulders and just kind of had her holding on the one end and gripping on the other. If you do want something a little bit smaller, though, she comes with something more of a plastic version of the whip. Comparing the two, one is definitely more a material, or almost maybe more closer to like a leather material, the other one being closer to plastic. This one ravels a lot easier. You could display her simply if you wanted to. If you wanted more of a curled whip, I suppose you could kind of wrap it around the figure's legs, or perhaps around her shoulders. But you can go ahead and flip the figure around, open up the closure here, kind of just get the whip kind of all in there. And it does close. I mean, it does hold it. You would think for a magnet that small, it wouldn't properly hold it, but it does actually do a pretty good job of holding the whip in place. You probably would want to ravel that up a little bit better than what I've done. A little close detail here on the whip, which is a nice touch, is a cat head. And that's painted there in silver. It kind of actually looks a little bit more like a squirrel, but I get it's obviously not Squirrel Woman, it's Catwoman, so I obviously be more close to a cat. A nice little small detail there. She, of course, has the alternate head. Now, this being the default head that came out of packaging, the more angrier head sculpt we currently have on the socket area. Again, we've spent a lot of time already looking at that, so we won't cover too much on it. A little nice little belt strap addition on the bottom there. She comes with a pair of swappable pegs, so if any one of the hand pegs break, or you just have a tough time getting them out of the hand sockets, you can certainly use these as well, just as little backups. And then she comes with a series of hands. We'll look at the boots in a second. Comes with a series of different hands. Now, currently in her hand, I've got one hand for holding the whip, and I've kind of just got like a default claw hand, just like something to scratch Batman with. She does also come with a more elegant hand. If you want to have her perhaps holding the diamond, you can do that. You can also have it for holding, kind of looping the end of the whip kind of around her fingers. She also has another kind of claw hand. And she has a pair of closed fists. I don't really know why you would need closed fists, because it just seems kind of boring, but they come with a pair of closed fists for her as well. Then we get a pair of boots. Now, you would look at the boots and think to yourself, they're simply the exact same boot as what she's sporting right now. Why would you possibly use them? Well, these particular boots have an arch right at the tips of their toes, basically implying that you could bend the toe. Again, if you want a little bit more of an elegant pose, you could kind of have her sitting more on the balls of her feet, like the actual toe portion, as opposed to having her flat-footed. Just to show you a comparison of what that looks like next to the regular boot, you can see again how the feet are completely flat on this boot and how they are arched or bent on this one. Running through Catwoman's posability, her head does rotate all the way around. You might find it struggles at times just because it's working itself on top of a rubber applianced neck socket, but the head does technically rotate all the way around. Hinging it up and down could be a little bit more difficult just because you're fighting it back and forth. I don't do that too often just because I don't want anything to happen down here on her neck, but it does move fairly easy forward and back. Her arms hinge outward. I've heard issues that the arms do become problematic, and some people have had instances where the arms have broken. So far, so good for me. She does have a hinge in the elbow, a rotation in the hand, and she also has an upper torso crunch and a lower waist swivel. For legs, the legs move forward, back, and out. She has a top swivel cut, right at the top portion of her thigh area here. What looks only to be a single hinge in the knee. And then mileage may vary. One could say she has a rotation in her foot, hinges up and down, rotations. But really, technically, a lot of that just is the way that the boot slides into place. The hinge is technically up here. It looks like there could be a secondary socket at the base of the boot. By the way, changing out the boots can be very, very easy as well. She does have the... Technically, again, you could rotate the boots this way. Maybe a slight pivot. There could very well be a socket at the bottom of that, where you can move the feet back and forth as well. I kind of like really going back and revisiting a lot of these figures that I had to look at so many years before, because it gives me a chance to kind of give a fresh perspective on maybe some of the things that bothered me initially about the figures, and maybe some of the things I didn't touch too much on when I first did the reviews. Catwoman here is a really good example of this. I think on a dated level, she still stays somewhat relevant with other maybe figures that you might have in your collection. The costume is pretty good. I like the sculpting of the face. Despite the fact, I think still there's something wrong with the eyes. And I can't quite put my finger on what is the reasoning, what specifically is the problem with the eyes. But there's something really off-putting about the sculpt of the eyes, in my own honest opinion. One of the big things I would fix specifically about the figure itself is the belt. That needed to either be a Velcro closure, or it definitely is something I'm probably going to have to glue in place so that it just simply won't fall all over the place when I'm moving and posing the figure. That being the case, it's still a good looking figure, and until Sideshow releases another version of Catwoman, this will be my go-to Catwoman for displays. Today, once again, we are revisiting the Sideshow Collectibles Catwoman 6-scale figure. If you guys like this video, certainly give it a like, and if you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet to this channel, hit that little subscribe button down below. You won't miss a beat when it comes to future videos. As always, guys, thanks for watching, as you always do. I'll see you next time.